Hey, everybody, welcome to the Multifamily Legacy Podcast. I'm your host, Cory Peterson. Third part of the wonderful series of university crossings. I have two of my partners that started with me on the deal from the very beginning, and they're none other than Sean Terry and Cory Boatright. Guys, welcome to the show. Man, this is going to be a fun segment of what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. What's up, man?
What's
I
up?
see that rent is due, and you look very, very happy because cash flow is coming in.
Oh, that's a magical thing. The word of cash flow, dude. Did you guys see my Christmas video?
Yes, that was really good.
So
You make a great Santa.
That's exactly, I want to call it stress weight, but I was just really trying to get in character.
Yeah, so what? You gained like 30 pounds to get in character?
Yeah, whatever it takes, right?
Yeah.
Anything's possible for the camera. So, guys, let's talk about university crossings. Cory, Sean, but I think this is both your guys' biggest apartment. We did a $5 million purchase, and you guys have never done you kind of done a little bit, but something probably not quite that size. And we took it on together and we kicked it in its butt, but it wasn't without its ups and downs.
Oh yeah, there's. So you want to go first, Cory? Or do you want me to go?
I'll go. So definitely there was some ups and downs on University Crossing, particularly, whenever you're dealing with investors and people want to do a deal with you. Particularly on my end, working with a lot of wholesalers, I don't have to go out there and ask for a lot of money. So coming and asking for money from people was a little different on my side. And then you get people that want to give you money. They commit to giving you money, but then you have a deadline. And the deadline, is something that was definitely can cause some stress because people have good intentions to invest with you, but then their money might not come in at the right time. Maybe they want to give you even more money, but you can't get it by the time that you have to close. And so those were some, big hurdles to overcome on this particular deal.
Oh yeah, life happens, right?
Right. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's like all the excuses happen too. It's amazing how that happens, right?
Yeah. You get a lot of excuses. You get a lot of people that are putting you off. Hey, I'll give. I'm going to look at it next week and next week. Yeah. So so you have those folks that want to give you money, and then they say, "Well, I'll meet you next week. I'll meet you next week. Let's meet next week," and they kick the can down the road. And so the interesting thing is everybody has good intentions, but whenever you have a date that you have to close, and then you run out of extensions, you run out of time, you have a time that you have to close, then there's really not much that you can do. And you've really got to work with folks that actually have the funds to wire and get it in. So that's very interesting. I know you do a lot with that, Cory, and that was the first time on my end that I was dealing with such a hard deadline.
You get to taste that taste, right? It's because we all think, right? So I always say, when we first start in these deals, everybody's like, man, I got lots of contacts. It's, I'll get it. Raising money is, a part of the deal. It's not the total part of the deal, but it is a big part of it, right? And it really comes down to relationships and trust and timing. Because sometimes the timing's just truly wrong for somebody. They mean well, but all of a sudden they're waiting for a sale of a property. Especially, a lot of your network, Cory, I think is in real estate. And sometimes they're just waiting for things to happen, and then if it doesn't materialize, it is what it is, right?
Right.
What about you, Sean?
Yeah, well, I actually this whole process was amazing. First off, because I went down, I got the multifamily bug probably back in 2005, 2006, 2007. So what happened was we went in escrow on a 306 unit, $13 million purchase property. And the difference between, doing like a compare and contrast difference between, that process and then this process. Now, we ended up canceling escrow on that process, thank God. But we didn't know anything about, first off, to determine if it was a deal or not, right? So we didn't have the spreadsheet like you coached us through to show us if it's a deal.
That's huge.
We didn't have, we didn't know what due diligence items were actually, what to do or look at the property, even though we spent probably about $30,000 at the time on due diligence. So we didn't really know what due diligence item to look at. And there's a whole bunch of different other factors with the occupancy. The loan we actually secured a loan on the property, and the loan was like, 8% loan because it was like a non-recourse loan. Didn't know anything about raising capital. The bottom line is that that dog wants to come in. He wants to be part of the interview.
That dog.
Hey, wait a minute.
I swear to God, I got people keep on coming into my door right there. I'm like, oh my gosh. Stop. Hold on, now I messed up my.
I'll just reach through the camera and grab his. Anyways, I guess the biggest thing for me is doing a compare and contrast to two different things. Now, you have a really defined system in place. You have a management company in place that knows exactly what they're doing. You have a way to analyze a deal, if it's a deal or no deal, which makes a huge impact. And I've analyzed a lot of deals over the time and since we've been working together. And the deals that don't pencil is amazing because they don't have enough cash flow after you pay, everything and do it.
You just hit on something. I think that's a lot of what a lot of people don't do, right? Because a lot of people, this is a deal, it's a deal, it's a deal, it's a deal, but they're not really looking through it in the right filter because most of the time those deals are not deals, right? There's something viably wrong with them that doesn't make them pencil right. And at the end of the day, I always, we talked about it a lot. We want to be able to sleep like a baby. And like even on university crossings right now, we're all sleeping like babies.
Right.
We're not worried about what's going on. It's happening just as we've predicted and planned.
Right. Well, you know what the interesting thing, one thing I like about your model, because there is different, multifamily investing models, right? So the model is going out and finding the distressed property that has maybe 40, 50, 60% occupancy, buying that property with, essentially hard money, raising syndication capital, paying 10, 12, 15, 18%, because there's a higher risk involved in that, going in, renovating the property, and then getting a new loan on the property, and then potentially exiting that property. Now, that works in an inclining market, right, that we have when rents are going up, properties going up. But once the market kind of goes like this, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? If we have a slight dip in rents, if we have a slight dip in valuations, a slight increase in cap rates, well, guess what? Now you're going to be stuck in these huge deals trying to refinance out higher debt that's going to be called in a situation, and you can be screwed. That, to me, is not sleeping at night.
No,
but
that's risky.
Your model is it has to cash flow right from the point of acquisition. So if it cash flows from acquisition, and then you can do some small tweaks to it to increase that cash flow and stabilize it better and get better tenants in there, it just makes way more sense. Now, you have to analyze a lot of deals to find those specific deals. But again, your investors are safe, you sleep better at night, and it's an overall better model because how did people get hurt in 2008?
Right? Oh, yeah.
We were all there. We all know how they got killed in 2008.
Yeah.
What was it?
Well, it's cash flow. Well, it was the values went down. Cap rates went up, values went down, and loans were called, right? Yep. And people had no new money. The banks weren't even lending. You couldn't get a loan.
One thing that you're, huge on, and this is one thing that has stuck with me is protect investor capital at all cost. Protect investor capital at all cost. And it's so easy to get excited about a deal because you're thinking about what that deal potentially could do. But when you really start thinking about if it doesn't do what you think it's going to do, what's your option, right? And what Sean's talking about on those unstabilized deals, And we know, we all know investors that are doing well on some of those unstabilized deals, but the risk and tolerance that's involved in it, the risk that's involved, it's a much different model than what you teach, Cory. And I think one of the things really interesting is that you liken it and put an analogy to a Lamborghini getting those 20 plus IRR rates, and you can get in that Lamborghini and you can go, but you might die because you're going about 180 all the time, and you have to really know what you're doing, or you potentially can get hurt. Versus the Cadillac, which is what University Crossing really is, and the way that you teach on how to analyze deals is more the Cadillac model, where you get in and it's just cruising. You're not going
smooth, baby.
Fast. It's nice and smooth. And when you go to bed at night, you're not worried about certain things, the cap or the market, because we're in 10-year plus money. We tend to get 3-year or more interest only, just to bump the cash flow a little bit more. We don't have to refi out in 3 to 5 years, and our model is not dependent upon having those rates change and then change our model. So yeah. I really like the fact that that you teach a model in a way that really protects the investor capital at all costs. And also you should say this too, is that your cash flow generator, your cash flow automator, your calculator that you created is Sean and I went through a lot of different programs. We saw a lot of different calculators, and yours was, a really
hell of a lot simpler, isn't it?
By far the simplest. It was by far the simplest. In order
easy to understand, like, okay, I understand what I got, right?
Yeah, either you get cash flow or you don't, right?
Cash flow.
Or if even if you don't, like, say if you did a lot of improvements in year one, you may not be cash rich on year one, but year two and year three, you're like, you should be able to see it come to you, right? And right. So, here's what I also want to talk about. So this is vivid in my mind as, we're driving from Atlanta to the property. We're all excited. And we get to the property, and it was like, wow. I remember watching your guys' face of, like, this is a really nice, this is actually a little better than we thought, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Except for the little house, the little one building on top of the hill. We were like, okay, that's the crapper. That's the one that we're going to fix.
Yeah.
Right? But you're like, wow. But more importantly, after we went and looked at that other, Sean, the property that you had that was a potential.
Oh right? Yeah, that was another great compare and contrast.
So let's talk about that, because in my mind, I will never forget when we were coming back from going to that property and going back to our property, and when we got foot on it, we're like, oh, praise Jesus.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I saw it, and I was like, and you realize, like, and it was like, I felt like I saw in Sean and you, something clicked. You were like, because you thought it was, you're like, man, hey, that other deal, it looked kind of good on paper.
It did look good on paper.
Right? It could have penciled, but when we got there, like, let's talk about our site visit at the other property.
Yeah. So what I loved about it is that not only did we all go fly down there, I've never been to Columbus, Georgia, didn't know anything about Columbus, Georgia, but quickly found out about Columbus, Georgia, that and it's interesting that, Cory finds these sub-markets where the cap rate swings don't go like this. Like, we're in Phoenix, Arizona right now, and Cory's in Oklahoma. Oklahoma is another, kind of a stabilized cap rate market, but Phoenix, you get cap rates that are 9, and you get cap rates are like, 3 to 4%. So the cap rate swing is dramatic. Where Columbus, Ohio, you're looking at very, there's not these major swings. That's another thing. So then we went out, we went down, and we literally were standing on the site. We literally turned, and you got this massive, huge, Columbus State University, where kids are walking across the street, going to their apartment, and just walking their apartment. And I remember sitting there going, holy cow, this thing is literally right next door. It's the only multifamily unit right next door. Right. And it was exciting. We're sitting there going, understanding what a deal looks like, standing on a deal, right? Mm-hmm. And not only looking at from the numbers perspective, but then looking at from the location perspective and the building perspective, for me was huge. So then I got a lead from this guy in our group, and he's like, "Oh, you got to check this property. I've got to check it out." So we took Mike, Mike's a prior U.S. Marine, so we have an affinity together.
Yep.
So he's a prior U.S. Marine, and we go in and drive down to this property. And it's weird because you got Columbus, and you got this beautiful university. You got, University Crossing apartment complex we're on, and then we kind of drive around the hill to the hood, and then we kind of go down this nasty hill and and then we get this nasty area, and then hey, there's the apartment complex.
There it is.
And we walk in, and there's the positioning. We got the broker, we got the property manager, we got us coming in there, we got this other guy, the kind of referral guy, and Mike comes in and says, "Listen, I'm doing the talking here, just to let you guys know. I'm going to do the talking here, and then we'll decide." So first off, he takes 100% control of the entire situation. I'm like, okay, good with me, man. I'm just sitting here. I just want to take notes, right?
Yeah, that's all. I was like, dude, this is awesome. Let's just watch from afar.
It was like it was better than like a 3D movie.
We were like going to the school because for me, he was like, Mike gets out of the car and he's kind of looking around. He's like, "So how are we going to do this?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, how are we going to do
He's
this?
like, "Do you guys want to do it? Or do you want me to do it?" And we're like, "No, we think we want you." He's like, "Okay, well, if I do it, that means I do 90% of the talking."
All the time. It was great. So we walk in. We're in this little tiny office. You got the broker there. You got the referral guy there. You got me, Cory, and Cory, right? Cory and Cory. And then this poor little property manager lady sitting on the desk with her stuff piled high. We're sitting there, and Mike is sitting back in his chair. They're going, and he starts drilling with questions about what's the current occupancy rate, what's the highest occupancy you have, what's the lowest occupancy, how many units are open, how many units have been renovated right now, all a series of questions. And literally, he was gearing the questions about trying to find potential in the property. That's what I got out of it.
Yeah.
And here's what sealed the deal, where everybody got up and walked out of the building. We got in our cars and left in a matter of literally 30 seconds after the broker said this and after the property manager. And it was is that you have to lower rents to increase occupancy. Right. Mike was like, he takes his paper, puts it down, and goes, "Well, I think I've heard enough." And we all walk
Actually,
out.
He said, that scares the hell out of me.
Yeah,
he didn't say that. He said something different. Yeah, that was awesome.
And so shuts it up.
Everything's perfect. How we going to increase rents? How do we get full occupancy? He goes, "The only way you get full occupancy is you got to lower rents." Right. And he's like, freaked out.
Oh, it was a classic. That was a classic representation of, Mike Keckman with AFI, my management company. He's been doing this for such a long time. It's like second nature. But even I have a blast watching him operate, and I learn things all the time by watching him and modeling what he does. But he truly went in and he wasn't grilling her. He was just simply, matter of fact, we got to ask the questions. I'm here on a fact-finding mission. And it was interesting because when we first walked on property, what the broker was trying to do was, "Hey, you guys ready to go see the units?"
Yeah.
Right? They had all the keys. "You want to see the units?" And Mike's like, "No." "Is the manager here? I'd like to talk to her." Right?
Yeah.
And makes a beeline.
A beeline.
And goes and just, and by everybody still making their pleasantries, and Mike's already sitting down and like going to school on it, man.
It's interesting because we had another property that we flew into Oklahoma and had from AFI look at as well, and it's just interesting the professionalism that comes with AFI. AFI is such an incredible management company, and just being able to watch them in their genius, watching Mike and his genius, like Sean. I mean that was art.
That was the best part of the whole trip.
That was
right.
That way, I wish I would have recorded it or videoed it.
Oh my God, that would be so gold. Gosh damn, that would have been gold. Because here's what happened too, Cory. Remember this? So we got back. So now we're back in the car and we're like, Oh man, we're glad to be. It's like as we go up the hill back, we're like,
Yeah.
oh, it's getting better. Like reality is like, oh man, it's so much nicer. And then we finally pull into our apartment complex again, and it was like, gosh dang, this feels good over
Yeah.
here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
I mean, it
and
has,
then it was the realization too of like, why wasn't that a deal? Because that was such a cost per door cheaper.
yeah,
Right.
Remember, Sean?
significantly, almost like $50,000 a door cheaper.
I remember you asking me, you're like, Cory, it's like you're like, dude, I was trying to figure out why the math was like, why wouldn't this be a deal? But now I understand it because it's really about NOI. It's the way you analyze a property from a single family point of view is versus the multifamily, right? A cash flow point of view, right? And it was like, I saw it click. You're like, boom, I get it. I see it, and it was like, I'm so glad we're over here and not over there, because that would be, if we were raising capital, that'd be risky.
Oh yeah, and interesting because you come from being a wholesaler. Cory's a wholesaler in Oklahoma. I'm a wholesaler here in Phoenix. From a wholesaler's perspective and how we're trained is to look at deals and distress. And we turn around and it's all numbers based. It's what the comps are, what things worth. The lower the price, the better off we're going to be to sell it to the highest price. So in now when you're looking at multifamily and we're like, wait a minute, this is like $50,000 a door. How can it not be a deal, right? And then when we go there and we analyze it, look at it, and we go, it was literally, that was an epic moment for me because I realized it's not price driven, right? It's NOI, cash flow, potential cash flow driven.
That's a great point. Is we talk about that quite a bit. It's like, man, just it looks so good on paper, and I mean, if we can just get it lower. But the bottom line is that when you buy a dog with fleas, it's going to be really hard to get rid of them. And even if you start doing a lot of improvements and make changes, there at some point it just becomes something that's just not smart for you to pursue, and you have other opportunities that you're going to bypass by dealing
way better, right? So it's like, okay, I remember saying, I think it was to either you or Cory or something saying, listen, if you were to raise, it was like a $3 million raise. I can't remember what the raise was, but let's say it's a couple of $1,000,000. Would you want to put your money in that deal?
Right.
Or would you rather go back to the property that we were just at, right? Our University Crossings. And I was like, oh, wait, no. I'd rather do, because University Crossings was a lot easier, which is what you're alluding to, Cory, was
right.
There's an opportunity cost, but also there's remember, there was two things wrong with that property that we looked at. One, it was broken.
Split, yeah. It had units in different
locations.
Units, and then they were, split.
And you could tell, like, the ones that were not, you couldn't really see, they were definitely blight. Like, no one's paying attention to that. That's like the hood.
Yeah.
And then also the other question that Mike really asked her was, what's the highest you ever got it occupied?
Yeah, I remember that too.
And she said like 80 something, like 85, it felt like.
Yeah.
And it was like, and because there wasn't a market in that little area. And even though it felt like it was only like 5 or 7 miles from our property. It wasn't that far.
Yeah, it wasn't that far.
But it was far enough to be in the wrong part of the freeway,
right,
or whatever it was, that it was like totally different. And is like, there's just not enough people that even want to live over here, even if it was all fixed up.
Yeah.
And
so the only way you're going to increase occupancy is lower rents, right? So that's if that's the model, that's not a good model.
He wants us to buy it at full price and then lower rents to fill it up. And it's like, oh, that's a bad idea. Yeah. How about we buy it at the right price? And even then, it still wouldn't work. But that was one of my biggest takeaways watching this process unfold for you guys, was like, oh, wow, right? I remember it felt like that was a big shift in the difference between a multifamily and what we've always been doing, which is single family and wholesale, right?
Now, it's interesting. And, if Cory and I have debated, Boatright and I have debated back and forth and talked about that. It's interesting how your offer model is compared to everybody else. Usually you get a lead on a property, 300 units in Tucson or Texas or wherever, and you're taught and trained or to submit an LOI. Once you get an accepted LOI or close to accepted LOI, then you go out, visit the property, meet the management, and go through the process. Yours is completely different, whereas you get a lead on a property, you do all your numbers, do all your due diligence, look at the area, then fly to the property, walk around, understand and meet the people in place. Then you come back, then you calculate, send your LOI, and that's a lot different method. And I think it's a lot more. It's smarter.
It costs more money to do it that way, but it's the right way to do it. Right?
It costs more money, but but imagine if you would have imagine we have submitted LOI and got accepted LOI on that property. And then we're like, then we would have got there and we're like, oh, this place sucks.
We would have spent way more money on the due diligence, right? Because that due diligence fee for me is like $10,000 to $12,000, right?
Yeah.
So,
but then you're apt to, because you got an accepted LOI and you got accepted price without even seeing the place. Now you're more apt to try to make the deal work instead of getting a deal and then having the deal work itself instead of trying to make a deal work. So. So I thought that was interesting. I think people listening right now, I think that'd be a great benefit to, just don't submit LOIs to all these different offers, and you get them accepted, and then it's better to actually go out there for even the purposes too. And now it makes you look more serious about the deal.
Man, here's when you're winning, right? So I'll allude to this. So Alex Blavojevic was the guy that sold us University Crossings, which then just gave me also the Hawkeye deal that I'm closing as well, right?
Oh, really? Wow.
Yep. And so,
is he the same owner?
No, it's the same broker.
Oh, same broker.
Right.
Okay.
So,
excellent.
And in my mind, this is about we'll talk about broker relations, but I also want to talk about we're going to talk a lot more about University Crossings because things went wrong from the seller's point of view, or for what the seller did. But with Alex, it's funny how relationships based. That's why I like going to the property, right, and doing the site visits, getting to know the brokers, talking to them. I don't always go to the site visits personally, but I always make it a point to talk to these brokers, and I do exactly like I teach, which is to find some commonality. So Alex he rides motorcycles well, right? Mm-hmm. And so every time we talk, we're talking motorcycles, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just been a lot of fun. Like we have a relationship. And so here I am now getting ready to close in 2 more days my second deal from him, another $10 million purchase. And dude, he's happy as hell. And dude, he's like, hey, listen, what are you doing in February? I'm flying to, I'm doing some enduro motor thing. And with my dad, do you want to come? With his dad. And he's asking me to come with him. Well,
that's huge.
It's an absolute hell yeah. Of course I'll come. Right? Because now we have a relationship, and dude, he's seen me perform twice, and we like each other, right? He's a good dude. That goes farther than anything else that I could teach, which is the relationship of the business, right? Yeah. And it works the same way with capital too.
Yeah. I think that's huge because he could feed you, deals for the rest of your life.
Deal a year. If I got just a deal a year from Alex, he knows that when he submits them, and I teach them this, so he's talking to me, I go, Alex, I want to let you know I really enjoy being on your short list and you calling me when you have a real deal. Right? And so I'm also doing some NLP on him, like, call me when you got a real deal. Yeah.
Sorry, I've got someone in my office. I got someone came in to get a haircut real quick.
I didn't hear a dog, so we're all right.
Yeah.
I know. She was about to bark at me, like, come on my hat.
Now, also, so on University Crossings, it didn't go exactly perfect, and almost no deal does. Remember, what did the seller do to us that caused us a little bit of pain in the butts? Remember?
Well, it's interesting. We had a closing date, and a closing date was set, but because you wrote the contract and the way you wrote the contract and the way the bank expects the property to be, they were under occupancy, right? I think they had was it 86% occupancy when they had to be 90 something plus?
89. It had to be 89. We got an exception to be at 89, right? And they
I
had
think
it.
it was for the leases too. There was something around with the leases counting towards if they've already signed it or
Pre-leased. Yeah, the word was pre-leased, and they said, "Oh yeah, these are pre-leased." Wink, wink, but they weren't. Right? They were like totally. There was nothing signed. It was like,
they were not leased.
Yeah.
right.
And it was kind of like this battle where they all of a sudden, and we talk about this a lot, but seller coma, right? That's where like a seller gets under contract, he takes his staff and management off-site, and everybody doesn't really care. They don't give a flip. Yet we're in contract for like 6 months, and that was what was happening to where the point where we had to retrade our deal. We had to get more time. We tried to get. We ended up closing at 88% or 89%, not enough to get our loan that we wanted. So now we had to do a bridge to perm, which cost us a little bit of money, and it took a lot longer to close this deal than we initially had wanted. Now, the good thing about multifamily is when you actually close, all sins are forgiven, right? And we're actually in the lease up season of, we're getting ready to take, we've had it. How long have we had this property now? A couple months?
Yeah, a couple months, but I think it took like 90 days after the original close date to get it to a point to actual close it.
Yeah, oh yeah, you're right. Because we made with the clause was you got to get it up to this point before we'll even start the financing again.
Right.
And so and then he wasn't really hitting it, and we even offered to send our team to the property to try to make it happen. He didn't want any help, and it was a really kind of, we were kind of going back and forth. There's a couple times where it was like, dude, what are you doing? And I remember you guys weren't part of this call, but there was a call that happened where, I'm like, listen, I'm letting you know I really want to buy your property, and I think you really want to sell it. He's like, I want to sell it. I'm like, then you got to work with me here. Right? We got to come together. You got to give the extensions because we're basing it on all this stuff. And honestly, you're truly in breach of contract, and you don't want to.
Right.
And it's really weird. Leverage is a crazy world, right?
But key. If you have it, you're happy. If you don't, you're suck and win.
That's true. So true.
And
explain the leverage that you had in this, because if you wouldn't, then he could have asked for significantly more money. He could have asked for more money, more hard money, more released money.
Yeah, because what happened to us as we're trying to wait for him to do this, he's not actually performing, and so now we could sue him for performance. Like, listen, you started off with this occupancy, and now you're over here. Well, it's really a hard argument to win. And yet he's like, well, you didn't close, right? Like, financing is not my problem; it's your problem, right? You said you're going to pay it for this. So even though there's language in there to kind of give us some outs, it's not the strongest language. It wouldn't be the strongest argument. And the best thing to do is close. And so sometimes there's a point where he had some leverage, and then you get something signed. All of a sudden, the leverage is back on our foot, right? And we even beat him up for initially for I think a couple $100,000 for capex items. I can't remember exactly. It's funny you think I know this deal exactly, but after three of them, I'm a little bit fuzzy.
It was on the older units, right? It was like from the older units.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
What else was important to you guys on that deal? Like, what did you feel like you learned, or just the whole overall process?
I mean, I learned that literally the entire process from start to finish. When it even to the point where working with the attorneys, getting the private placement, in place, going through the documents, when it comes down to a correct marketing package that you're going to present to investors, and how to present the marketing package to investors in a way that will get them excited about certain things of the property. And the interesting thing that was different and a little bit harder to kind of work with is that the financing was a 6 and 6. I mean, not financing. The return for investors was a 6 and 6, a 6% pref and a 6% on the sale of the property. So literally a 12% max an investor could make. So if the deal if we bought it for 5 million, sold it for 50 million, the investor would only make 12%. So on $100,000 over a 5-year period, they make 60 grand.
Don't say that in a bad way, Sean.
Yeah, I know. I'm not saying in a bad way, but for me,
my investors love 12%.
Yeah, from when it comes to raising capital, there's two ways to raise it. And talking about what I've learned of the way you raise capital and the way I was under the impression you raise capital, I tend to want to raise capital based upon the upside and what you can get and what the deal could do and the potential of the property. But you raise capital on the safety side of it, saying, listen, I'm your safe money. I'm the place that you have your retirement money in. I'm not the stock speculation, and if you want to go buy an apartment complex, 60% occupied, and then renovate it with hard money and then turn around and raise capital and do that. Yeah, well, take your betting money and go put it on that, but take your safe money that you're going to live on for the rest of your life.
Boom.
That's your 6 and 6. So I'm that was a different mindset shift for me, but it's amazing that if you talk to the right person, they'll respond to that, because what's an investor's biggest concern? Their number one concern is, how am I going to get my money back? Is my money safe? When am I going to get it back? And am I going to get it back? If you can answer those questions in a logical way, and let them understand that how that property is going to afford us to become successful, and then they're going to get their money back, it solves a huge amount of problems, right?
Dude,
and then
it does. It's really bad. And you said it right, the right avatar, right? Or the right kind of person. And usually that's the person that's mainly in the stock market, right? So someone that's in the stock market with their self-directed, their IRAs, or their Charles Schwab account, Fidelity account, they're usually not doing a 12% return. Their advisors are telling them 6 to 8, right? So if they can get 12, they're actually making better returns without the volatility.
Right.
And for those types of investors, and there's a gazillion of them out there, that what we offer is just a little bit better, and it's consistent. Yeah. Versus what I call, Big Papa, right? Like, I don't have any Big Papas in my deals. Like the guy with, the golden ring and about $4 million, right? Like, I don't have those guys. I just have lots of, I call them mom and pops, $100, $200, $300,000 chunks. And I think there's a lot of value in that. And I feel like I take my Wall Street investing properties, and then we come down to a Main Street level and service it with normal people that want to grow their money like the big guys.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. It was definitely different.
What about you, Cory? What was your biggest?
That was a big one, and that was definitely had its challenges. For a lot of it was just like Sean said, just changing the mindset. But once you got there and you tweaked it, it worked pretty well. The other thing I think that was hugely helpful was your marketing package. Your marketing package was extremely professional. It allowed Sean and I to come in and now be a part of that team that he has with AFI, with all the other units that they have under management, all the ones that you have under management. And so the marketing package really presented the whole investment in a way that is, extremely professional, but also it showed just enough information to really see if anybody wants to raise their hand and is serious enough about it. And then you get on the phone, talk with them. Of course, we
did a lot of that. I mean, we talked. I helped talk. You guys talked on your own. That is the one effort that I think that we all collectively we worked our butts off in bringing in capital, and it's not easy taking those phone calls and calling, but we all did it together. And dude, we raised what's our raise when that 1.6
million?
Yeah, man,
5 million. Yep.
I mean. How does that feel? It feels pretty damn good, right?
Well, it's interesting because I've never raised. I funded all my projects, all the deals we've ever done. I always fund them, or I had my father-in-law, put in a couple $100,000 here and this. Uncle put a couple $100,000 in there. So I've never really went to a market and raised capital before and actually pitched, a particular deal. But this was the first time, and I think I've talked to, over 75 different presentations that I did with people.
You guys killed it, man. Honestly, you guys killed it. I'm thankful that I had you guys in my deal, because
the value is going through the presentation over and over and over and over and over and over again, and then seeing you present it, Cory, right, when you're talking to investors. And so the amount of experience that you get from, how many deals that you got, five.
Well, and I just know my ins and outs of like my management company. So really a lot of times I just tell the little crooks and nannies of how we operate, right? Some of those things are like little things that have happened that we've done before. And you're like, oh, well, that's a good story. That makes sense. They're like, oh, you feel like you get their heads shaking. Yeah, okay, I understand that.
Right. Yeah. You know what's interesting is that I thought a lot of the investors would come from my real estate network or podcast or my email list or any of that stuff. But all the investors that I put in the deal personally came from relationships, the people I know. I mean, even this Hawkeye is like, he's one of my best friends that owns a $100 million GC company, and his brother now and his dad both want to come in the deal and stuff like that. So it's like a guy I've known for years. We've been on cruises and Turks and Caicos together, and he's traveling, and but he has a ton of money in the stock market. He doesn't want to do it. He's going to feel comfortable, and I know the floodgates will open for him and his family on this thing.
Oh, without a doubt.
He was very excited about it, and confident in the safe money, and to be able to answer all those questions are great. So
one of the other things too, you mentioned relationships. Mine was about 50-50. I had 50% relationships and 50% of some investors. But the interesting thing about relationships is that it's not about necessarily the money in the beginning. It's really about, like you said, Cory, many times, is the story, and the story is incredibly crucial, and on the positioning and really understanding where this person's head is, where their funds are now. Are they happy? If they're happy with their returns where it is right now, well, they don't need anything. But if most of the time they're not. And so whenever you introduce a safe alternative that has got a track record of predictability and a high return, a steady high return that's double digit, it really does perk their ears quite a bit. But the story is what's very important. Like my relationship with one of my doctors that came in on the deal, it was like, Cory, what do you think about this deal? What do you think? I mean, it was more about almost looking at me and saying, if I think it's a good deal, then and then I'll go ahead and trust you. So that longevity and that relationship that has been built, like Sean says, that those relationships, that goes a long way. On the other side of that too, that's why it's crucial that whoever you're doing business with, why it's so great that we're doing business all together. I take a bullet for you, Sean, Terry. I take a bullet for Cory Peterson, Shelley. And you've got to think about the people that you're doing business with. Are they in it for a quick buck? Are they in it for the long term? Are they in it to create legacy wealth? And do they really care if something happens, which things do happen, but do they really care about the people involved in the deal? And so that's why it's so great that it was easier decision to do this deal. Because Sean and I had other options of what we were looking at, what we wanted to do with multifamily. And it was so great to work with you on a deal because we knew that.
Man, you're still in my thunder, dude.
We had that same mindset, man. That mindset, when you talk about relationship with your investors, it's also just as important with your relationship with who you're doing the deal with. You know what my favorite part of this whole deal is to be able to do it with you guys. Honestly,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I honestly look back at this deal and I was like, man, this was a really fun experience to take a couple new partners and to give them this gift that I know, right, and to have it work for you guys, right, and in a way that where we can do more deals together, and we will have a lot. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg, right?
Yeah, for me, I just feel like it's the tip of the iceberg. I'm just kind of breaking into the whole raising capital thing, but You know,
and I enjoy the hell out of it because I like doing deals with people that I know, like, and trust, right? Help me raise capital, help be part of a deal. As a group, we get better together, and we really actually help each other play a better game together than just doing it by yourselves. So
Right.
I really have, in fact, I mean, I really look back at this whole transaction and it brings a true smile on my face because I've seen the growth, and I feel like I did something, right? I helped you guys see it in at least my light, right? Because there's lots of different ways to do multifamily, but I think you guys got it and understood how, at least how Cory Peterson sees the world through the multifamily lens, and it was a pretty good experience.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal experience, and there is obviously everybody wants to partner and stuff like that, and choosing your partners is incredibly important, But I think I'm completely appreciative of what taking us under your wing, showing us how to do presentations, showing us how the private placements all set up correctly, show us how to talk to investors and position from the hype side to the safe side, but then also too, really reiterating that, listen, not every deal goes straight up and it's a great deal. There will be problems. And if there are problems, and we are all on the same page to protect the investor, and that comes first before we make any money,
Yes.
we got to make sure we're protected. I think having that in line, because I've been in business with people that have been partners that don't have that philosophy, and they want to screw the investor, and to save their own pocket. And I had I had to cut the relationship, and I actually paid the investors out of my own pocket to make it right.
Yeah.
So long time ago. But the bottom line is that I think I've been to your seminar, I've been to your mastermind, your boot camps and stuff like that, which anybody I highly suggest, because he takes you through the raising the capital, he takes you through how to analyze the deal, he even gives you a deal to analyze, and you sit down and analyze it, shows you the whole process of the management company and how it works, and puts everything together. But everything he teaches is exactly how everything is done in the real world. So there's 100% congruency between what is said and what is done, which is rare in this day and age.
Yeah, and I'll brag on you too, man. I mean, your event was incredible. It was great. You brought an SEC attorney, the same one that we used on our deal. You brought in your management company on anytime that they're talking. I mean, the same one that you're using on your deal. You brought in people that are involved in the transaction, the same one. I mean, so it was, the congruency factor was huge, and then also the exercises of going through those exercises, breaking into little groups, giving little examples and tests and things like that. Plus just your entertainment, Cory, was great too. But yeah, just the education side was phenomenal, man. And so it's incredibly helpful, and blessed to be in business with you.
Thanks, guys. Hey, with that said, I think we can wrap it up on that note. That's a great experience. University Crossings, Columbus, Georgia, a killer deal. Yeah. We're going to make crap load of money when we sell it. Our investors are happy as hell. They got their first payment coming January 20th. And Merry Christmas to you guys. And you know what? Let's have a great new year.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Absolutely.
I'm excited. Now we got Hawkeye closing too. I'm excited about that one.
It just doesn't stop. The fun never stops over here with the Kahuna. You guys have a great day. Thanks a lot. Hey, if you're listening to this podcast right now and you want to get in the multifamily space, do not hesitate. Stop what you're doing right now. Go to kahunawealthbuilders.com and click the Quick Start Workshop. That is the best way for free to get a crap ton of training from me, the Big Kahuna. And remember, if you believe it, you can achieve it. Your paradise is possible.